Living Corporate is brought to you by Canaries. Let me tell you about Canaries. Canaries is a tech company formed in 2018 by black founders who experienced inequities in the corporate world like most of us in the workplace. They saw typical diversity initiatives, but knew that to create systemic change, diversity, equity, and inclusion needed to be done differently. They're still ahead of the curve, focusing on the E and the I using a data-driven approach. Think canary in the coal mine. The name is a nod to the canaries coal miners used to bring into mines to determine if the work environment was safe or undesirable. That's what they do for companies. They help you find the folks you need to listen to, the canaries, who will help you diagnose, measure, and attack your DEI challenges. Canaries has your back. Check them out at www.canaries.com/employer. That's www.kanarys.com/employer. Living Corporate is brought to you by Black Men in Tech. Black Men in Tech's mission is to elevate the voice of black men in the technology space by offering year-round engagement opportunities and philanthropic contributions for people in the black community, the neighborhood. In the tech industry, black men regularly struggle to access networking and career advancement opportunities. At Black Men in Tech 2021, they are partnering with their allies to create a safer space where black men can share their experiences authentically. Through this effort, Black Men in Tech hopes to share knowledge that can be used by black attendees to overcome race-based obstacles while also offering non-black allies the chance to learn how they can be more supportive of their melanated colleagues. To learn more about the Black Men in Tech conference that will be happening on June 19th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, check them out at blackmenintech.com. That's BLKMENINTECH.com. Black Men in Tech. What's up, y'all? It's Zach with Living Corporate, and I'm excited about today's podcast because we're talking about venture capital and like the VC space. VC is very unique, and that's what I continue to learn. Like as a landscape, it's just not doing the same things that like the typical corporate American space is doing, the 9-to-5 space is doing, in terms of even the pressure around DEI. They don't feel it the same ways, and yet it's an area where black and brown people continue to get the shortest end of the stick, continue to face the most oppression, continue to just be shafted, right? It's curious. We haven't had very many VC-centric conversations in the history of Living Corporate. So that's why I'm really excited to have Marco Rogers on. Marco, he's a lot of things to a lot of different people. And so what I want to do, I don't even want to like mess him up by trying to like, say too much. I will say this though. I will say that he is a coach. He is an investor. He's a subject matter expert, and he's a cool dude. I'm thankful to hear. I'm thankful that we were able to have him on the podcast and talk about his journey and really talk about just his experience, because it sounds, and you'll hear me react, it sounds like something out of a movie. I don't know, like the way he's talking about just the money that's out there, the capital that can be gained in this space, and yet so many of us, black and brown people, specifically black people, specifically black women, are just not included, right? We're not involved. We don't have the same level of access as these white folks do. And so we talk about the future of the space. He's hopeful. I'm not going to spoil it too much more, which gave me hope, right? Now, I want y'all to make sure that y'all click the links in the show notes to learn more about Marco, and also like just explore Living Corporate, right? We have a lot of stuff going on every single day. There's something coming out from the network that we're creating, that we're doing. Want to make sure that y'all actually plug in. Before we plug in to Marco, though, we're going to tap in with Tristan. See you in a second.
What's going on, Living Corporate? It's Tristan, and I want to thank you for tapping back in with me as I provide some tips and advice for professionals. Today, let's discuss why you should let go of what doesn't serve you in your job search and career. Have you ever met a person who couldn't stop talking about this really great thing they did, only for you to find out it happened 10 plus years ago and it's not relevant to the discussion you're having, but they're just really attached to it? Well, I definitely have, numerous times while doing this work. It's natural to build attachments to people, places, things, beliefs, ideas, achievements, and even jobs. Typically, those attachments are linked to ideas we hold about who we are and what we are and aren't capable of. But when it's time to move to the next level in life, our drive to hold on to those things that may no longer be useful can blind us and work against us. Take that older job on your resume, for example. You know, the one you refuse to let go of even though it doesn't fit your current career puzzle. I know you enjoyed the experience and you're proud of the work you did there, but it's not showcasing any different skills, highlighting relevant results, or selling you as the best candidate. It's just taking up space, and it's probably one of the reasons you haven't landed that ideal job yet. You might want to consider only focusing on the relevant skills and achievements, moving it to an additional experience section where you just list the title, company, and dates, or simply removing it altogether. The same thing goes for random certifications, volunteer experience, and outdated awards. While it may help you in the past, ask yourself, how is it helping me move forward? While developing attachments is a part of life, you have to ask yourself, is this thing I'm attached to still serving me? If the answer is no, then you have to be willing to let it go so it doesn't stunt your progress and get in the way of everything you're trying to achieve. This tip was brought to you by Tristan of Layfield Resume Consulting. Check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Layfield Resume, or connect with me, Tristan Layfield, on LinkedIn.
At Living Corporate, we often talk about how we as Black folks show up at work and how these corporate power structures impact how we show up. But we know when work ends, we come home, log off, and have to show up at home for our families and communities. And as a Black man, I often turn to Let's Talk Bruh for the real, honest, and healing conversations on Black masculinity, mental health, and patriarchy. Let's Talk Bruh, or LTB, is a platform that creates content around Black masculinity and the impact of patriarchy in Black communities. In other words, Let's Talk Bruh is having real conversations that Black men need to hear and be a part of. Let's Talk Bruh creates interactive, healing, and learning experiences with Black men and male socialized folks of all sexual orientations and gender identities. Through their content and community-based programs, Let's Talk Bruh seeks to reduce patriarchal violence in our community and provide support to those most impacted by patriarchal violence, specifically Black women, girls, femmes, queer, trans, non-binary, and gender non-conforming people. Tap in at letstalkbruh.com. To be clear, that's letstalkbruh.com. So brothers, what are you waiting for? Let's talk, bruh. Marco, how you doing, man?
I'm pretty good, Zach. How are you?
Man, I'm good, man. I told you, just transitions, new beginnings. We making stuff happen, man. Listen, I am intrigued, and I've been really excited about talking to you on Living Corporate because we connected initially back on Clubhouse on the chatty.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was checking out Clubhouse and I was dropping in and out of different kind of events, and I remember you showing up to a couple of them.
Yeah, man. We were talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, but we were also talking about just the VC space. So I'm gonna ask you a couple of really front end loaded questions, right? And you take them where you want to go, but I really want to hear your perspective on the record with this stuff, right? So let's talk about venture capital. The last time that we really talked about the VC space and Black and brown folks, I'm gonna tell you, this was some years ago. We had Shelly Bell. on the podcast. So for those who don't know, Shelly Bell is the founder of Black Girl Ventures. And so we had Shelly Bell on because we were talking about just the landscape of VC. Now, again, this was back in, I want to say 2018, Marco. And so, we were talking about just how dreadfully, shamefully, sinfully even under-supported, underfunded Black Black ventures are, particularly Black women, right? We look at just from if you would to look at it from a matter of percentage, and just where the pieces are, it's literally crumbs, if that, crumbs of crumbs, I'm really curious though, right? Like as we look at like the last 18, let's say like the last 18 months, so a little bit before George Floyd, but then really as like DNI apparently had this whole, this whole renaissance or awakening. Talk to me about like the VC space today. Like, was there a similar kind of like push around diversity and inclusion in the VC space as there was in like in the corporate arena, or like what has it been looking like out there?
I think it's not at all. It doesn't even look as progressive as it looked in the corporate space, right? So I'll just start right there. Like, VCs, they don't even really follow the trends that are happening in these larger companies, right? They really have their own culture and their own ecosystem. I've been out here in the Bay Area for about 10 years and have just spent a lot of time in this ecosystem and learning a lot about how venture capital moves, both from like an economic perspective, but also that social and cultural perspective. Like VC is a culture, right? And they all talk to each other, they all follow trends, but it's very different from what you might find in other kinds of industries, right? So I would start there by saying like you're definitely kind of asking the right question about like how's it different. And I from my perspective, I think from the beginning, even when we had started to push DEI initiatives and have these companies really kind of take notice, the VC kind of community, in my mind, like immediately started to be resistant to it, right? They didn't want to talk about it. They didn't want to kind of acknowledge the importance of a lot of what we were saying. And they wanted to stay very focused on like, how do we make money, right? That's what they're here for. And they don't, they don't mince words about that, right? And so the whole conversation around, the importance of diversity and equity and inclusion, they just weren't really trying to hear it at all, right? And I would go back to, what you mentioned about how they don't fund, people from kind of traditionally marginalized groups, and particularly like Black women. I have a pretty personal connection to this because my wife, Ania Williams, is an entrepreneur, right? So I watched her go through this firsthand. She started her own company. It was hot. Like her company was called Tinsel, and she made really amazing like electronic jewelry, right? So like their kind of signature piece was a set of headphones, right? Like headphones that you can use, plug into your phone, carry with you everywhere. But it was a necklace, a very stylish necklace that a fashionable woman would want to wear. And that was her whole deal. It's like, I'm tired of wearing like cheap plastic stuff that Apple's trying to sell me, right? Like I put a lot of work into my look and I want it to be nice. Anyway, like she went through that whole journey, right? And went and pitched 100 VCs trying to get them to understand the opportunity there, and like, couldn't make it work, right? Couldn't make it work. She raised a significant amount for, the venture that she was trying to do, but like it ran out. And when you go and you try to get your, Series A, whatever, it didn't work out. And so she came out of that experience, and, she and I felt the same way. It was just like, look, if she can't do it, like this is, you can't get better than where my wife comes from and her credentials and what she does and what she knows. If they're not giving money to her, they're not giving money to nobody who looks like her. You know what I mean? And so she had that experience very directly and came out of it with a lot of information about why that doesn't happen. You know what I mean? Why the numbers are what they are in terms of funding, right?
Yeah, no doubt. So it's interesting, Marco, like one, it's depressing. Okay. Like, and I appreciate you giving context in terms of like kind of comparing it, because I think it's easy to think that like, oh, everyone's into this like performative thing where like everyone's donating money and there's bread to be made by everybody. And I don't, I was curious about that for the VC space, because I don't know if I've seen that. Talk to me about when you say like, okay, companies are interested in making money. Like, what would you, aren't there several like points of research, articles that have been dropped about like the missed investments that are in Black and brown VC, like Black and brown startups and entrepreneurs that just going to the wayside?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that data has been circulating, and I think it's really good, right? So, but this is where I think we get into talking about culture, right? Like, because you can make a case that if you talk to your average VC, they should really want to pay attention to this because there's real opportunity to make more money, right? And you start from a place of assuming that they're kind of primarily driven by just kind of capitalistic concerns, like very kind of practical, like, oh, I can make more money over here, I'm going to go over here. But in practice, it doesn't really work that way, to be honest, right? It's not just them trying to make money, but them trying to maximize the level of like predictability, right? One of the big things in if you look at, and I'm not just making this up, like VCs write about this, right? There's a lot of kind of, the more prominent VCs that will write and try to kind of put their thoughts out there about how they think their business works. Folks like Paul Graham, right? I can't stand Paul Graham, but he's known as a prolific writer, and he has written a lot about how he thinks that business works. And, one of the things that gets popularized in that circle is talking about pattern matching, right? What they do is it's not just about like, we're making money like wherever we can find it. But once we find a pattern that we think works, we're just going to do that until it stops working, right? We are going to repeat that pattern because we know that it has shown to be like lucrative. And that's why you get, the same kind of company getting funded over and over again. Like today, it's like, it's AI, right? Or VR, virtual reality. If you rub some AI on your startup, you'll get a VC to talk to you because they have seen that be a business that is growing, right? A while back, it was social. When Facebook kind of hit really big, then it was like, oh, anything that's social, if you're rubbing social on your startup, you can get a meeting with a VC. That's how they operate a lot of times, is patterns, because they want to be the next Facebook, they want to be the next Uber, and they're just going to keep doing that until it stops working. And to come back around to what we're talking about, I think the big challenge, even when you put this data in front of them, is when they look at businesses that are, being pushed by people of color and women and, other people who are not kind of that traditional kind of pattern that they're used to matching, it, what you're up against is like them telling themselves they don't know anything about that business. They don't know anything about that community. They don't know how it works. So it's not predictable to them. Right? They don't know what to expect. They don't know how it's going to go. And that translates to risk in their minds.
And so then I guess my challenge is like, where do we go today forward? Right? Like, like there continues to be, so here's where I'm at with this whole thing, Marco, is we know that Black women continue to have like the highest rate of entrepreneurship. What's frustrating in those articles that cite that is that they rarely connect the dots between the rationale or reason and the context for why Black women are the highest entrepreneurs. And frankly, Black and brown people in general are like, entrepreneurship is growing. And the reason I believe for that, and I mean, correct me if I'm tripping, if you think I'm tripping, is because corporate America continues to be a place that isn't really welcoming and creates a sense of belonging for them. So we end up having to figure out other ways to make it work, not only for our own well-being, but like for our own, like our holistic well-being, including our financial well-being. And so if that's the pattern, though, if that's the reason why we're leaving out of corporate America and exiting, trying to create our own thing, but then we go into the space that is seemingly worse, I mean, what are we doing? Like, what's the solution?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a key question, but I guess I would maybe reframe it a little bit, right? Because the people that I talk to, including my wife, they're not finding the environment worse, right? Like when they talk about the corporate environment and they talk about the challenges there, they're not missing it. They like being entrepreneurs and they like being out on their own. It's literally just that they can't get the capital so that they can continue to grow, like they can continue to make their own, entrepreneurial endeavors kind of start to work out. They like what they're doing. That's why they keep doing it, And so it's not so much it's only when they go into these spaces with the people who have money, right? and try to get that money in the same way that, these white men do, that they find the frustrations. But my wife loves her her entrepreneurial lifestyle. She loves having the flexibility and, the ability to kind of set her own direction. And, like all of those things I think are very compatible with the communities that we're talking about. Like they like what they're doing. That's why they're doing it. And it's really just like they're not being given the resources as the other people who do this.
I think about, I guess, and I hear you. I guess I'm thinking about like the folks, and you help me here, right? Because I'm, again, like I am not from the VC space, and like I'm intrigued by the work. I'm intrigued by the arena, and as I think about just like the way the technology is going, I believe access is becoming a little more flat. I don't think it's certainly not as flat as it needs to be, but like I'm thinking about the folks who are like, because there's different levels. So there's folks who are like, okay, look, I didn't get all the funding I want, but I can still hit X and pay my bills. I can still do what I want to do. But there are certain folks who are like, no, like, if I don't get funding, I'm not going to be successful. Like, I'm not going to be able to move forward at all. Like, and this is the means by which and so my question is like, man, for them, like, what's the, like what are the alternatives? If we already know what the landscape is and how exclusive it is, and how Black and brown folks are not getting the funding they need, what are the other options for them to like mobilize and at least like give themselves, 6 to 12 months?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that there is a long answer there. And the answer is long because, like you said, you kind of have to, you're talking about other options where you kind of have to dig into those other options, right? You kind of have to paint a picture of those other options, and you have to help people understand how to move towards them, because they're just not easy and not as accessible. One of the big challenges when we talk about venture capital, right? And you started to ask me what kind of things have changed, and this is something that I don't see enough people talking about. I know I have some friends who kind of work in this area, and they're really trying to bring light to it, because I think it's very significant. Venture capital is a particular kind of entrepreneurship and business building, right? And until very recently, it was considered to be niche, right? Like that was just one way to get capital for a business, and it was considered like a very risky venture, right? That's literally the term, like venture. Is about like, this is a risky investment potentially, right? But there's potentially big upside. And I think, when you look at Silicon Valley, when you look at software and tech, I think it fits that model really well, because you can get started, but usually you can get started with modest resources, and then you put a lot of money into it, and you try to get it to grow, right? And you can reach everybody because it's the internet, right? So it's like global. There's a reason why venture capital kind of migrated, it seems to be a great fit for tech, but that's just only one way to start business. And the vast majority of businesses don't work like that. It's like, a small business, you go down to your bank, you get a small business loan. That's how you prop yourself up. Right now, what I was coming around to is the challenge. What we see, if you really kind of start to talk to people who have the data, all those other sources of capital had just really started to dry up and be harder to get at, right? Like banks don't give as many small business loans. And so people who want to start their business, people who want more predictable terms around this, people who don't understand that, this venture capital avenue, and even if they try to come after it, that, they're not the right color, so they're not going to get it, right? Like, I think that because tech has grown so large, and by extension venture capital has grown so large, it sucked a lot of the air out of the room, and a lot of other ways that people used to try to get capital to start their businesses they're just not there anymore. And that's a huge problem. It's a much, much bigger problem than like the problems in venture capital. And I didn't really realize this. I think last thing I'll say, I didn't really realize this until I started to talk to people. And I realized that people kind of coming up, I guess, or people who are kind of really just kind of entering that phase of their lives where they might want to do entrepreneurship, the first and only thing that they've heard of is raising venture capital.
Facts. Yes.
Right? Like that is the message that they get. It's like starting a business is go find these rich people and try to get them to write you a big check. That is the way that you start a business. And I just think that there's just so many things wrong with that, you know?
So let me get a little meta and talk about living corporate because that resonates with me, right? So like living corporate starts off and we're a single podcast. Like we don't have like all these other pods. We don't have web series. We don't have all this other stuff. We're not like a media network, just a podcast. But then like as soon as I started talking to people about my vision for living corporate, people were like, okay, so like where are you in your and again, I'm ignorant. So I literally don't even know like what this is, right? Marco, like, I don't know, like, oh, what series of funding are you in? Like, where are you at with your fund? And I'm over here like, what are you talking about? Have you done the family and friends? I was like, what are you talking about? No, I don't. No, I'm and so like when they look at everything and I say, look, I've invested X, and I'll tell you what X is when we hang up, we get off live, but I've invested X over the past 3 years. People are like, what? People are like, you've invested what? And it's like, yeah, I've just been bootstrapping. Now, here's the thing, Marco, like I'm in corporate America, big four, I'm in the consulting industry. So I have a little bit of money so I can fund it. Right. But like the truth of the matter is like, if I really wanted to step out and like do this and I wanted to like do it, let's say I wanted to like jump out and just do it. Like I'm looking at this and people, and I remember I would talk to folks who don't look like me and they'd be like, oh, well, you could just get your friends and your family to give you like, you just need like, you could probably raise like 50, 60K. Like I did it. And I'm like, man, my family.
And they're dead serious about it. They're dead serious.
They're dead ass about it. And I'm over here looking at them like, bro, let me tell you something. If I opened up an email and I said, hey, look, and I emailed, it could literally be 100 family members. And I said, yo, I need to raise $100,000. Dog, I can't even imagine I really can't. I can't even wrap my mind around that. Right. And so like,
would they laugh or would they think there's something wrong with you? Like seriously wrong with you? It would be one of those things.
So here's the thing. Here's the thing. So straight up. So let's talk about it. So in my family, I'm seen as the one that has a really good head on his shoulders. Right. I keep my nose clean. I do what I'm supposed to do. So typically people I have my family cheers me on. Mm-hmm. If I was to send them that email, I probably get a lot of phone calls and people being like, so what is this? They wouldn't laugh. They probably would wonder if there's something going on if I fallen on hard times. Like, yeah. Why would I be asked? Even like the culture of even asking your family for money like that. Like that's not a thing. And that's not a thing that I'm gonna say it's not a thing that Black folks do like that for me, what I've experienced. And so, anyway, going back to it, when we talk about these journeys, like I can't tell you the amount of people, no one ever talks to me about how to secure a business loan. People are always like, okay, so what's your VC? I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know. And the thing about it is like, because of the decisions I've made, I'm not in a position where like, I'm depending on this day. And like, this is something this is a full-time hustle for me right now. Mm-hmm. But I can't imagine, man, like if like, let's just say everything, like something crazy happened and I just had to depend on this, I don't know, like that like I wouldn't even know how to do that. But the truth of the matter is, Marco, what's depressing even for me as an entrepreneur, as someone where living corporate is paying for itself, which is super exciting to me. The fact that living corporate is just paying its own bills to me is that's a win for me from where we started. But here's the thing. Like I have a vision, I have a dream for living corporate to be like Viacom, but for diversity, equity, inclusion media. And, the truth is I have to figure out some way to get a lot of capital.
Yep. Yeah.
And every time I talk to people, and I won't say names on the record, we'll talk later. But the point is I talk to people and it's like the work the work to even like get in front of the people is like, bruh, there's no way I can do this and have a full-time job.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I'll, you're absolutely right. I would give you, I would say, for your audience, it's important to kind of talk about, I guess I keep coming back to culture, right? Like these things are pretty pervasive in, the circles that I run in. I would call myself like very much kind of entrenched in, Silicon Valley tech, like culture. That's where I've been for the last 10 years. And so, when you talk about coming from like Big Four consulting, I'm sure that there's a culture there and you could speak to it, right?
Yes. Yes.
And on the venture capital side, I think there's a culture as well. So first of all, like when you talk to people about, your business, your venture, whatever, what have you, when they say, "Oh, why don't you kind of go over here and raise money?" That's also the way they tell you no. Right? That's also the way that they tell you it's not right for me. I don't see anything here, but I'll point you in a direction, right? That's part of the culture. It's like, well, I'll point you in a direction and maybe that'll help. And if you're really on your hustle, you'll go after it. Like it's all, there's a lot of that, like, the founder grind, mythos, about that, right? Like, I know a lot of folks probably heard like, oh, they just like started it in their garage and they didn't have any money. Like it's not true, but they love to tell that story. Right. But that's also just the way that they tell you no. That's also just the way that they say no without saying no. It's like, oh, well, here's some sources of funding that might be, better for you. And so the friends and family round is a very real kind of, it's a very real kind of, trope. And it's basically like, you essentially have to have shown that you have something off the ground before you talk to VCs, right? It's the days where they would talk to you about just an idea are mostly gone, right? You have to have something already. And the friends and family round is also just the way that they tell you, well, you need to make something happen on your own. And I need to see a little bit of it before I'm really ready for a bigger conversation, So those are the kind of things that I think happen in the culture. And there's a whole set of people, coming back to just talking about privilege, there's a whole set of people for whom like that's normal and that's very accessible, right? They can go and ask for $50,000 from, an uncle, you know what I mean? Or whoever in their family. They get it from one person, not even a lot, but like one person can give them that. There's actually a really popular podcast called, How I Built This.
Yes.
Yes. And, I'll tell you, I'm gonna be real with you, right? I listen to that podcast all the time, but not because I think that it's awesome for what it is. I listen to it because I'm amazed by like hearing the people's background, like the founders' backgrounds, and picking out the points of privilege. Right? That's what I do, and I know
call it out. What you mean? Give me an example.
I know that that's not what they intend, but they want to tell this scrappy founder story, and instead, what you hear is like, well, I was actually living with my girlfriend's parents, and like rent free. I was living with my girlfriend's parents rent free, and I was backpacking through the hills or something because that's just I didn't have anything else to do, right? And then when I got this idea, I went to my my girlfriend's father and told him about it, and he was like, "Oh yeah, that seems like a great idea," and he loaned me $50,000, loaned,
quote unquote,
right? Yeah, quote unquote. And that's the actual story. That's the real story. And so I'm listening, and like, I think there's a certain type of person where they're like, oh, well, that's really fortunate that he was able to get that loan. Right. But I know, first of all, it's not a loan.
It's not a loan.
Right. Because he's not paying it back. And instead, like his, father-in-law, whoever, is investing in his business. Right. It's much more business than that. And not only that, but it comes with all these other connections, And that's all while he's living rent free. Right.
Right.
And so I just pick out the points of privilege, like the things that person had that they take for granted that a bunch of other people trying to do it don't have, won't have. Right. And so telling the story it seems fine until you look at other people like, why aren't you able to do it in the way that I'm doing it? And I pick it out. You can see it. You can make a list. Right. Like my father-in-law doesn't have $50,000. I'm not living rent free. My rent is actually quite real and quite expensive,
Straight
and all
up,
of those
man.
things keep you from reaching your destination.
I think my challenge sometimes with, so Marco, LLC Twitter, right?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, man. So like LLC Twitter, man, it's this idea of like, you just gotta hustle. You just gotta be smart. You just gotta, and it's like, dog, the best way to raise capital is with capital. Like people out here, I don't know, man. I know that the stories exist, but like people aren't over here it takes a lot. Like the stories that I hear from like the folks that have come on Living Corporate, again, I'll talk about Shelly, but like the work that she had to do, even when she talked about Black Girl Ventures, the work that she had to do to stand that up, and the work that she still has to do to stand that up to get the capital she gets, the hustle, like the intuitiveness, the grit, like just all of it, just to get a portion of what somebody probably got back when they were just getting started. So like, let's talk about the future. I'm going to ask you one more time. And I'll ask you this way. What is it that folks should be, if we should have hope, what should we have hope in when it comes to venture capital and traditionally marginalized people in this space?
I mean, I hear you, right? And I'm trying to find kind of a real answer for you. For what it's worth, I always have hope. And I'm searching myself to kind of try to figure out where that comes from. I can tell you why I still work in this industry and why I have been working hard to get more, Black folks and other people of color into this industry. Because as much as we like to talk about the problems, then there are quite a lot of problems. It is still an industry where, you can come in and if you get the right opportunity and you choose the right company, right, as an employee, that you can receive like a significant windfall, right, as I have. And, I don't know if you've heard a little bit about my story, but I think it matters. Okay.
Let's talk about it.
So I got the first half of my career, I got started. I was in the DC area. I grew up outside of Atlanta, Georgia. I graduated from Georgia Tech, so I had a good kind of foundation with my degree, which is also a point of privilege. But I got my first job. I moved to DC. That's where I got my career started, and it was fine. It was doing mostly consulting work and that kind of thing. And then I got recruited. I moved out here to San Francisco in 2011, and I started working at a startup. Now I didn't know anything about startups and venture capital at that time. It was just an objectively better job. That was it. And that, where we come from, that's it. That's all. It's like, oh, a better job than the one I got now. They're paying significantly more. All right, bet. And also I get to move to California. All right, let's do that. Right. And so, I moved out here not knowing anything and then started my education in startups and equity and whatnot. Right. And I got extremely fortunate in that first startup, the one that I got recruited to, ended up being really successful. Right. So it was a good job. And then I worked there for a couple years, and then that company got acquired by Microsoft.
Wow.
And it was pretty big. That company was called Yammer. It was a social networking platform.
And dog, what? Wait,
yeah,
Marco,
we got acquired.
Wait. Oh my gosh. Sound man, put the cha-ching sign and the Mario coins right here. Oh my gosh. So when the Yammer bag came, So then, like, what did you? Because I come from humble beginnings, right?
Yeah, we can, we can get real. Like,
Did you open up? So
what's the real question?
did you open up the? So like, how did the money hit you? Did you open up the account and you just saw like the bag, like staring in the checking account? Was it like a check?
It was a check. They handed me a paper check with more digits on it than I would make in like a couple years salary.
A couple years salary?
Yeah. So
okay. Oh my God. Okay.
That it was real. It was real. And it was like, so, and it's a very kind of surreal process too. I have never been through kind of a, like an IPO or company goes public. I think that's a different thing. But this was very kind of weird because they start talking to you about it. They give you a bunch of information. It's all legal information. And I'm just like, okay, is there a decision for me to make? Nah, not really. Right. Like something's about to happen to you. There's no decision to make really, they gave you this equity in the company. They gave you these shares. They weren't worth anything, and now they are. It's like you're waiting to find out how much they're worth. And then they tell you, and you're like, you're doing the math. They tell you how much per share, right?
Right.
And then you're doing the math, and you're like, wait, that's a lot of money, right? So how's that going to go? Are they going to give me some like, at first I was thinking like, there's going to be some like, payout over time, maybe I'll get some money like every month or something like that, right? But then like once the ink is dry on the deal, right, the acquisition deal, they just start dispersing funds. Like a whole check showed up. They were like, "Hey, here's your check." And
so it was just one big
check
bag
across town and deposit it in your checking account. That's how it works.
Oh my God. All right. Last ignorant question and you get back to it. So then like, what's the one thing you spent? Like, what's the one thing you got in the name of like, no, I got this bag. I'm going to get something nice for me.
I really want to feel like I did something ignorant with it, but I don't really think I did. Cause I feel like I have simple, tastes, but I mean, we bought a house. Like I own my house, right?
Flex. Like, yes.
In one of the most expensive cities on earth, you know what I mean? Like it's not a small thing to buy a house.
That's dope. That's
San Francisco, right? And a lot of people are priced out because they can't even afford the down payment. To be clear, I have a mortgage, but most people can't even afford the down payment, right? Because they're talking about 20% on $1 million.
I'm about to say, yeah, nah.
You got $200K like laying around, like.
Yeah, bro.
No,
sheesh.
You don't. Right. And so, what I was really getting at with you is that it is a leveling up, right? So all of a sudden I have enough capital, actually liquid capital to start thinking about my moves differently. That's really what it is. And that it really does change everything about how you make moves to have liquidity like that.
Man, I was excited to have you on because I wanted to talk about this space, right? So like, and I'm thankful for you being here. I think like, let me ask one last thing before I let you about. I'm gonna ask a couple more questions. We're about to wrap up. All right. So what needs to happen for the VC space to radically shift and change and favor marginalized people? What needs to tactically, tangibly, what needs to happen?
Realistically, so we need to there's a set of people who are pushing past a lot of these barriers, and yes, they're high barriers. It's difficult to push past them, but it's possible. And I think there are always those people who are not going to take no for an answer and are really going to stay pushing at these barriers until they knock them down. And in this business, in the venture capital space, what it means to knock them down is, you have people who are Black and, and people of color and Black women who are going to make $1 billion doing this. That is the space, right? Is that they're going to win. Their company is going to win. They're going to, try to get the right funding and they're going to get the right opportunities. They're going to hit the right growth trajectory, and they're going to be worth $1 billion. And then they're going to become venture capitalists. That's the arc, by the way, which I don't know if everybody kind of understands that, but where venture capitalists come from, they had their own business, they won, and now they got more money they know what to do with, right? And so then they kind of just move into a different business, which is, oh, let me try to find other opportunities and help other businesses grow. But I'm not doing it with my money. I'm going to raise a fund. Right? That's what they do. That's what they do. They raise a fund. And so you're probably familiar with Arlen Hamilton, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that's the name that I bring up when people ask me a question like yours. It's like, what's going to happen? I'm like, we're going to do it. We're just going to do what they're doing. They're making it harder for us, but we're going to do it. And Arlen, is very serious about doing exactly what other venture capitalists do, but with people who don't get the money, people who don't normally get the money, Black people, Latinx people, women. I'm going to give it to them, and they're going to show you that they can also do it. And then we're going to make billions of dollars. That's what's going to happen. Right. And she's so for real about it.
She is. She's super for real about it. And shout out to Arlen, guest of the show. It's an honor. And you're absolutely right. And so essentially you see, okay, so dang, man. So you said that. So now I got this. So what's stopping? Here's my thing. And I know that it's happening in pockets, but what's stopping more Black billionaires, and I know they're not many, but let's just say wealthy Black folks. There's like 7 or 8 of us out there. What's stopping more wealthy Black folks from doing what Arlen's doing?
Yeah. I think this is where we kind of have to get really deep, right?
Let's go for it.
I think it's a real question, and I think there's a lot there, and it could be very fraught for our community, right? Like we could start some shit. You know what I mean? But like, I'm gonna say 2 things, right? One is that one thing we're gonna struggle with in our community, and I'm sure that this is part of what you see in living corporate. But like, one thing we're gonna struggle with in our community is when some of us really start to kind of accelerate our careers, and we move into that space of having more money. It's extremely like isolating. Like it pulls you away from your community in a bunch of different ways, right? Like I grew up, I'm very much rooted in Blackness. I grew up in Atlanta, and very connected to my Blackness, but moving towards like having more financial success often takes you away from Blackness. And we know that makes sense because it's the flip side of what we talk about with all these barriers. They push to keep Blackness out, and like, it's not perfect. And so some of us are able to excel, but it's isolating because we find ourselves being the only ones, we're like dispersed, right. And kind of disconnected from, our usual communities. And it's hard to bring everybody we know with us, when a white person makes a lot of money and they start going to places that people with money go, what they're going to find there is more white people, right? When we start going to places where people with money go, there's just a lot fewer of us. And if you take that to its logical conclusion, I'm just saying that like there are Black billionaires, but they're talking to white people. Because those are the only other billionaires they got to talk to. Billionaires only talk to other billionaires. That's one thing, right? They're not talking to us anymore. Right. Once you get to a certain amount of money, it's very hard for you to talk to normal people, right? And so it's very difficult for them to be connected to what's actually happening in the community in the way where they get real information about how to help. People always coming to them about how they can spend some money, but I don't know if they get real information about how to help, right?
Mm-hmm,
so that's one thing. And I think, some people will take issue with that framing, and I understand it, but that's where I'm at. And I said what I said. Okay. And then I think there's another part to it though, which is that I do think that it doesn't have to be billionaires. It's the same thing I said to you before. Like it doesn't have to look a certain way. There's actually a ton of money in our community. That's why there's an opportunity, right? Like we actually, as a community, as a collective, have really tremendous, capital, but we haven't really figured out how to move it. right? We haven't really figured out how to bring that together and invest it. And I think that there are a lot of opportunities to do that, and people who are working on it, including, folks like Arlen. But I think so. Let's go back to venture capital, right? Because this is what we started talking about, and I guess you and I talked about how we wanted to kind of maybe, give people some more kind of real concrete information about how it works and why it works that way, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So when we talk about venture capital, it's a circle, right? It's a cycle. They invest in, they find businesses to invest in. They really invest in those founders, right? So founders come up and they start their businesses. They get a lot of resources and capital from venture. Then that works, and they are hugely successful. They make a bunch of money. And then those people become venture capitalists. They're already hooked into this community. They know other founders. They know other people doing whatever. It's people that used to work for them. People that used to work at Google go to start their own company, right? That's why there's a whole kind of ecosystem of like, oh, this person is formerly from Google. It's a credential. It becomes a credential. It's formerly from Google. They've seen it happen. They're going to do it themselves in their own business, right? And that can work. I think that model can work even for like any other community. So when Black people start winning, we have to invest back into helping more Black people win by creating that same ecosystem. You see what I'm saying?
I do.
And so I think you could bootstrap it with getting some Black billionaires to put some money in it. I would love to see that, right? But even on a smaller scale, I think we can start really reinvesting in our community. I just really would like to see people organize around that.
And to be clear, like I said, Black billionaires, I don't even believe billionaires should exist. So what I really meant was
that's
like
a whole conversation.
that's a whole different conversation. But I think what I'm really thinking about is even like the 100,000, like the people who have, a few K to throw at stuff, or even like the millionaires, which there are a few more of us. There are a few millionaires. So like, I don't think that it has to be like this astronomical amount of money if we practiced, some group economics, but it just seems like, it seems like every other week, right? And because I'm somewhat plugged in. I check out the headlines, every month, every few weeks, somebody's hitting a crazy lick. And so, and I'm just like, dog, like what is going on? But, anyway, look, Marco, we've had a great time. We could talk forever. Before I let you go, if you had to give, these white VCs 3 things that they need to stop doing right now, what would they be?
Ooh, I think one is that, well, I'll say one thing is very practical. I'll just say that they need to start giving money to the people who are hungry. Because I think that when I look at venture capital today, I think that Elon Musk was on Saturday Night Live a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
Right? That's a very big kind of cultural moment where like tech and VC is not the underdog anymore. They're like on top. They're like tech is like the biggest companies that ever existed. And so it's not a scrappy like niche anymore. And so I think a lot of the people who are moving and a lot of the patterns that they're matching and the people that they're giving their money to are not hungry, right? We know where the hunger is, right? We know where the hustle is. It's right here. Like, nobody does hustle better than us. And so if they really are trying to, find that model of, this hungry founder and entrepreneur who's really going to do anything to make it happen, they know where that is. And I just don't know what is keeping them from really recognizing that. And so they need to put the money where like the hunger is, And so that's really practical. And that just as a baseline of like why we come back to the diversity problem, like why they're not doing that. But that's number one. I think, number 2, I don't know what number 3 is yet, but number 2 is where I just get real, I just got to get real with it. I'm just like, look, at the end of the day, I think that we like we need to figure out where our power is and stop giving it to them. Right?
Mm-hmm.
We have leverage. We have a tremendous amount of leverage. Like, we haven't even talked about kind of the ways that the Black community helps move these platforms. Right? And we just need to stop giving it to them. Like, yeah, they got a lot of money, right? But if they stop winning, like, it's over for them. You know what I mean? And I think we decide what wins. We almost always do, right? In entertainment and film and social, everything, right? The early trends are always with Black and brown communities, and we decide what wins. We're just not doing so intentionally, and we're not doing so in a way where we reap those benefits. Right. So instead of kind of talking to, like, directly to VCs, like, what should they stop doing? I'm just cynical about it. I think that they're going to do what they're going to do, like white people do. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I just don't think they have to listen. They really don't. Right. And I think we can, there's going to be people who keep talking to them, and that's fine. But I'm tired. I'm done talking to them. I'm tired. Right. Like, it's not that they don't understand. They understand perfectly, and they're still doing exactly what they plan on doing. Right.
Yeah. And so that's where, and again, for good or bad, I'm still very ignorant to, like, the VC space. Like, I very much so want to have you back. I want to talk more about this arena, because at a certain point, and I think, like, this is just like, now this is like just the meta, this is just where I'm at across the board for Black people in general, not just VC, which is the last part you just said, which is, I think I'm just tired of trying to convince folks of our value and our humanity. Mm-hmm. I'm tired of trying to, like, look, we have been making the world move for the past centuries, millennia. We also now have so much data, information, like you just said, theater. I mean, from, like, media to sports to entertainment to tech, social media platforms, that chatty house, everything. We literally make everything move. So, like, I think I'm with you, which is, we just gotta coordinate and organize, man. Like,
yeah,
because we have it. We just need to organize. And shout out to Arlen Hamilton. Shout out to you, man, and to the people who are out there, like, making those things happen. Because I don't think, even still, like, I don't think that Arlen Hamilton can get enough credit for the work that she's doing, and that it is revolutionary. It's happening in a space that a lot of people don't understand. But give it another 3 years.
It's happening, right? And
it's
happening. I think, our community has always known how to communicate these ideas. I see the momentum building, right? Where we're going to get more and more people to understand, like, how this money moves and how this power moves and how to find our version of this power, right? Because we have, we have more, like, our power is actually being kind of, this is a longer conversation. I know you're trying to wind down, right? But we are being kind of unconstrained. The money doesn't move in the same way that it used to, where, the powers that be could keep it really locked up. Right. It moves a lot more freely now. And if we organize ourselves in the way that our culture moves and the way that, our lines of communication move, like, we can do a lot, and they can't stop us. And I think that's what we're trying to figure out. Like, what's the channels where they can't really stop us? You know what I mean?
Right.
If we go through the traditional channels, they know a lot about how to stop us, but there's more channels than they can really, like, police today. And so we have a lot of opportunity, and it's really just about trying to organize, like you said. Like, organize is exactly the right word.
Yeah, man. Marco, we got to have you back. Okay.
I'm up for it. I enjoyed it.
I appreciate you. Let's talk soon. By the way, what do you want to plug? What you got going on?
Oh, I plug the same thing all the time. You heard me talk about my wife. She is so much more impressive than I am. And I think that, you and other people should really get into what she is doing. My wife has several businesses that she runs and organizations that she started. But the one that I kind of really like to put on people's radars is her nonprofit organization. Okay. So I told you a little bit about my wife. Her nonprofit is called Black and Brown Founders. That's the name of it. Okay.
Yep.
blackandbrownfounders.com. And, like, you can So the thing is, like, what she did was take all of her lessons from starting her business, from, you know, trying to raise venture capital, what worked and what didn't, you know, everything from the idea concept to the marketing. She has tried to package that, and she is giving it to people, right? And she brings in people from our community and tries to help them get started without trying to go and get these big checks, right? Because you have to make moves yourself. Yes. And so I tell people to check it out if it's something that you want, but also I would encourage people to donate, right? Like, they need this capital in order to bring resources to our community. That's what they do. That's what she does. And so if you're looking for, you know, a place to give that's going to have real impact, that's what I would recommend.
All right, so check it out, blackandbrownfounders.co. I'm going to put the link in the show notes. There's a link tree right there. Y'all, you know what I'm saying? Everybody you ain't traveling and stuff yet. You know what I'm saying? Put the chips down for a second, open up the app, scroll on the link. And then, you know, if you are, pull her over to the side of the road. I'm not trying to have you hurt yourself, but check out the Black and Brown Founders. Check out the link in the show notes. I want y'all to really check that out. Beautiful website, beautiful logo and branding too. Like, great. This is really nice.
Oh yeah, they're legit. My mind doesn't play around.
It's gorgeous. Okay. Well, yo, Marco, we'll talk to you soon, man.
Thank you so much.
Living Corporate is brought to you by The Leadership Range, a podcast within the Living Corporate Network. Hosted by globally certified and Fortune 500 executive coach and leadership development expert Neil Edwards, The Leadership Range is focused on having real, raw, soulful, and accountable conversations about inclusive leadership, allyship, professional development. Every week is a new episode with new learning and new actions to take on to grow inclusively. Make sure you check out The Leadership Range everywhere you listen to podcasts. And we're back. Shout out to Marco Rogers. Shout out to all of the work that he's doing. Shout out to VCs and Black VCs in general, man. Like, make sure y'all click the link in the show note. Y'all learn more about Marco Rogers. And also shout out to Arlen Hamilton. Like, it's so dope. I think it's easy in this season to forget, man, there's a lot of movers and shakers out there, like, really creating serious waves. And Arlen Hamilton is the person, she's the vanguard. She's the leader of this movement, of this transformation that we're seeing, and that you may not see yet, but that you will see and will continue to feel in the next decade. Like, I'm confident of that. And so shout out to her and the work that she's doing. Shout out for her being a guest on Living Corporate. But yeah, look, we'll catch y'all next time. Make sure y'all give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. Tell a friend about us. Check out the merch, livingcorporate.shop. Talk to y'all soon. Peace.
Living Corporate is a podcast by Living Corporate LLC. Our logo was designed by David Dawkins. Our theme music was produced by Ken Brown. Additional music production by Antoine Franklin from Musical Elevation. Post-production is handled by Jeremy Jackson. Got a topic suggestion? Email us at livingcorporatepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us online on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and living-corporate.com. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned.